I wanna be there when the people start to turn it around, when they triumph over poverty. I wanna be there when the people win the battle against AIDS. I wanna lend a hand. I wanna be there for the alcoholic. I wanna be there for the drug addict. I wanna be there for the victims of violence and abuse. I wanna lend a hand, say, to Mommy Nas.
And good morning. This is Joni Eisenberg on WPFW 89.3 FM, your Jazz and Justice radio station. Chuck will not be with us today, but we have a very important show and some wonderful guests to discuss the topic of maternal mortality in Washington, D.C. Why is it so high, and why is it getting worse? Obviously, a topic that has not been discussed enough. And our main guest today is one of my all-time sheroes, and not just me, but many others admire and respect and love Dr. MICHAL Young, who is a neonatologist. She's worked for decades, initially, or one of the first places for many years in the DC General Hospital before it was shut down. She ran the NICU unit, which she will talk a little bit about what that is. She is a neonatologist, which means she helps take care of those little bitty babies who are born prematurely, sometimes just 2 or 3 pounds, and she oversees to make sure they thrive. She recently retired. She has worked for many years as well with the Howard University Hospital. She was the assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at Howard University College of Medicine. She was also the medical director for something called the BLESS Initiative, Breastfeeding, Lactation, and Support Services. And much of her life has been involved with the neonatology issues. She's on the board of directors for DC Breastfeeding Coalition, and also, I believe, still on the board of an organization called ROSE, Reaching Out to Sisters Everywhere. And before we bring Dr. Young on, I'm also very honored and excited to have two, I'm calling them today, guest responders that will be talking with Dr. Young and asking questions, making comments about what we're hearing. And that is none other than the great Denise ROLARK Barnes, who is also a shero in our midst, needs no introduction, but I will introduce her to say that she is the publisher and second-generation owner of the Washington Informer, where she succeeded her dad, the great late Calvin ROLARK, who founded the Washington Informer in 1964. She is also the past president of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which represents the black press. And she's very much a part of the WPFW family, has been on this show many, many times, and Denise and I have worked together, as has Chuck, for many years. She's also a Ward 8 resident and a mom, a mother of 2 children. Last but not least, we're excited to have a new guest with us who will be also engaged with Dr. Young, and that is JAREN LOCKRIDGE. JAREN LOCKRIDGE has recently assumed the leadership as chair of the Ward 8 Health Council, and I'm very excited about that. That council, founded by Marion Barry. I used to come to all the meetings for many years, and JAREN took the place of Calvin Smith as the director of the Ward 8, the chair of the Ward 8 Health Council. She also is the director of something called The Well at Oxen Run Park. in Ward 8 and works with DC Greens. And we will be having Jaren back to talk more in depth about some of those issues. But today our focus is on maternal mortality in DC. So with that said, welcome, Dr. Michael Young. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good morning. It's great to see you. I wish the listeners could see you as well. Dr. Young, there's so many things we could talk about. We'll focus on maternal mortality in DC. Many of us, of course, have known over the years that DC has had a very high rate of infant mortality. But tell us where we are in Washington, D.C. today with moms dying, or explain what maternal mortality is and then where we are with it in D.C.
Well, there are a couple of different definitions for maternal mortality. The one most uses a death within a year after the birth of a child. Most places are looking at death within the first month after the birth of a child or after the delivery of an infant. It doesn't necessarily have to be a live birth that has occurred or a surviving infant, but the mother has given birth. They also look at it up to 6 months. It's different points in time that you can check maternal mortality. Mm-hmm. But no matter whether we're looking at it at a month, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year, DC has high rates of Black maternal mortality in particular, but maternal mortality in general compared to the rest of the United States.
And some people, I've heard people say we have the worst, the number one rate, the number two rate, but we rate pretty high, I understand.
Well, overall, for the country, let me just pull this stat up because I don't want anybody to say I told them something different. We're looking at 36 per 100,000 versus 20 nationally. And when we look at Black maternal mortality, it's 46 per 100,000 nationally and 70.9 per 100,000 here in the district. So our rates are significantly higher. Most of that burden rests on our constituents who are in Ward 7 and 8.
And 90%
of the deaths are from our Ward 7 and 8 clients.
Yes. And is this something, Dr. Michael Young, new? Because many of us have heard for decades. I remember hearing about the infant mortality rate in D.C., which we had been number one for decades. I remember hearing about that in the 70s. But I don't remember hearing about maternal mortality. Is this something that is new? How does the maternal mortality rate now compare to what it was 10 or 20 years ago in general?
That's a good question, Joni, because I've been trying to look at the data of the impact of the closure of the hospitals that serviced wards 5, 6, 7, and 8. The first one was DC General in 2000. And trying to see what the epidemiological studies or follow-ups have been very difficult. That first 20 years, even the first 10 years with the closure of DC General. DC General was a level 1 trauma unit. It was also, we had a level 3 NICU there, and we had very high risk OB. United Medical, which was Greater Southeast, which was renamed United Medical, was also in that area, but they had just a level 2 nursery. So most of the complicated OB came to DC General. With the closure of that hospital, you took out a very significant population of service to high-risk women. And I honestly cannot tell you what the data is. Now, when I'm quoting the data that's given right now from DC, it's when the Maternal Mortality Review Committee, which was established here in 2018, I believe, look back at data from 2014 to 2018. So they looked at that time frame that's giving us the stats we have right now out of DC Health. But I'm still not seeing what was years before. And I suspect that it has increased because you took away a significant service for obstetrics and gynecology when DC General Hospital was closed.
And Michael, if I could just jump in and say that this program, this show To Heal DC, we're celebrating or honoring our 30th year, and we started this show in the midst of the fight to save DC General, and we said public hospitals were an endangered species. And I can remember, I'll always remember Dr. Michael Young testifying at some of the hearings to keep DC General open, and she said, if we don't keep this hospital open, we'll be back 30 years from now talking about the same issues with regards to infant mortality and maternal mortality. And sure enough, you, of course, were correct. And I must say, as a public health professional, the thing that's always discussed is data. We have to have the data. And yet I don't think there's been any studies analyzing the data of the impact of the closure of DC General, or certainly the impact on infant mortality or maternal mortality. Is that correct?
Not that I have been able to find. I'm still looking. I know that when Anthony Williams closed DC General Hospital, I know they fired the epidemiologist for the city at that time. I don't know when they put that person, that office back in place. So there may not be really well collected data. It's got to be somewhere, though.
Well, one thing with data, you're not supposed to hide it. So if it's there, the public and the community needs to know. We're going to bring in a moment Denise ROLARK Barnes and JAREN LOCKRIDGE. But before we do, just for those people who may not know or remember, give us the rundown of the hospitals that have closed since 2000.
So after DC General, the next hospital was Providence. And Providence had taken on quite a lot of the obstetrical care and medical care as well of the residents in that area. And still not sure. I'm still not clear on I have some speculations, but the reason for the closure of Providence. That's another hard-fought battle.
Yes.
That didn't go anywhere. And then subsequent to the closure of Providence, medical services, at least delivery services for women, was closed at United Medical. And so when that happened, that left the 6, 7, and 8 without any place for an infant to be delivered.
And so women have to travel across the river, which is very difficult, and deliver a baby. Now let's just go back for a minute to United Medical Center, which I believe most of the city supports the operation of that hospital with dollars. And of course the dollars have been cut in recent years. And I understand that there were some questions that the health director had about the program that was operating that delivered those babies. But do you know, Michael, if there was, or why was there not consideration of giving the United Medical Center more support so that they could improve whatever problems there might have been when in terms of women delivering a baby in that United Medical Center?
Well, I'm not clear on why more services were not given. You have a very high-risk population, and they don't always present themselves timely for service, so that you have to be prepared for high-risk deliveries, and which still occur, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
and United.
Meaning, so the deliveries
still present themselves in labor at that institution because that's the closest hospital or closest process. So it's still very, very, it's very, very difficult, I think, for patients. Why the city chose not to? There are a number of reasons. I mean, the majority of hospitals are on the northwest side of the city now. In fact, all of them are. And I guess there's a decision on who's going to survive and how we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. I speculate that there's a long-term plan for gentrification of the district, and yes, you have to get people out of there. And if you want them to leave, you have to do things that will encourage their departure. And you certainly will have that if you remove health services. Now that we're getting more gentrification, you see we're going to have a hospital in Ward 8. There needs to be one, but even the level of services that are planned there, there'll be a level 3 trauma center is what's planned for the GW hospital there, in an area where we have a lot of trauma. Trauma level 1 is what used to be there. And I think the plans for the nursery is a level 2.
So explain what level 2 and level 3 means.
Level for nurseries, there are 4 levels. Level 1 are just for general OB with ability to do C-sections. 2, those babies are smaller, but need some support. Maybe need a little respiratory support, but not that much. 3 can ventilate and take babies that are born weighing less than 1,500 grams and even less than 1,000. And then your level 4 units are those that have other respiratory support type of areas. They have our high frequency ventilations, things we have for our very, very tiny, tiny infants, as well as other surgical things. So in a city where even though our preterm rates have gone down, right? Recently, they're around 9.8% versus the 12 to 15 that we used to have. You still have a high low birth weight rate that's in wards 7 and 8. And so it's a little interesting to me that you're going to only have a level 2 nursery there for support. That implies that you're going to, again, send babies out and away from their mothers from the birthing process, unless we can improve the kind of care that they get so that moms and babies don't have to be separated.
You're listening to Dr. Michael Young, neonatologist, shero of ours. We're talking about maternal mortality in D.C. Why is it so high? And it appears to be getting worse. And certainly there's no evidence that the city is providing services to turn these statistics around. And before we go, I'm going to ask Denise to jump in a moment. But in general, how are we doing with infant mortality? I think there's been some improvement in that regard.
Our preterm birth rate has gone down to 9.8, as I said before, the 14 we used to have. Infant mortality rate is down to about 4.5 per live birth, which is great for this area. Mm-hmm. But a lot has gone into that.
Yes.
We have much more advanced. The advances that are there are what have made the difference. We have steroids that we can give before the birth that helps advance the lung of our babies, because that was really what killed most of the infants, what we call respiratory distress syndrome. We just didn't have anything other than a surfactant to try to help them. Now that medication, we give antenatal steroids that will induce the lung to advance in maturation faster than it ordinarily would. So that helps bring a baby in with better material to breathe with. And then we can give them surfactant once they're born. That helps the lung open up better. We have much higher mechanisms in terms of keeping evaporation loss, because the baby's skins are real thin. They lose weight, they lose heat. And we have different ways now with our incubators and different techniques to decrease that weight, that heat loss and weight loss. Those are the things that killed babies long ago. That is still a challenge for them today, but not the way it used to be. And we have all types of IV support to give them nutrition. And we have finally learned that human milk is the milk that the babies need to grow. And there's a big focus on being sure that babies get their own mother's milk, preferably, in order to mature best.
Yes, so we've been saving the babies' lives, but now the mothers are at risk. And I must say, in addition to everything Michael Young just said, there was a major federal initiative called Healthy Start that came out, I believe that was in the 90s, and we had a strong Healthy Start program in D.C., which had over, many dozens of dedicated staff people who I had the pleasure of working with. That made a big difference, as well as, we had Marion Barry in there. So he had concern about those little babies. So, but certainly the federal and local support for infant mortality reversal made a big difference. So let's jump to what I'm calling our responders of the day, since we may not have time for callers. Denise ROLARK Barnes, I'm so glad you're with us today. What are your either reflections or questions for Dr. Young? So let me just say, I'm remembering that Denise and I worked several years ago when we heard that United Medical Center was at risk for closing, and we had a big forum at Union Temple, and we did a lot of work in a few days. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Joni. It's a pleasure to be here and to see you again, Doc, to have you on and to share your insights into what's going on in our community. And I have a few things to say, but I'll start off by saying I'm glad that JAREN's with us because of a mother of a set of twins and a young son. She's much closer to this issue than I am because my children are now adult men. But I think back, Joni, to when I was pregnant with my first son and realized, first of all, I didn't have health insurance. And so I was could no longer be cared for by my physician because I didn't have the insurance to have my son delivered. So I had to use the clinic at Washington Hospital Center, which in my mind was going to be a traumatic experience, but in reality was probably one of the best experiences I could have had because they were so, because of what they had set up for women there, who had to use the clinic and the constant, making sure that you were doing all the things that you needed to do to have a healthy pregnancy. And thanks to them and to, God, I did. However, my second pregnancy wasn't as fortunate, and I delivered a daughter, 4 months early. And science and Dr. Young knows that, science can now, save the lives of those early babies, those babies born early, much better than they could 30 years ago. Yeah. So, I think about her all the time, born August the 3rd, lived 2 hours and, was gone. So, and then part of that too became a mental, sort of issue that women deal with. So I want to talk about that a little bit. That, when it comes to pregnancies, there are also pre-existing conditions. A lot of us, unfortunately, and especially in this community, don't always go into our pregnancies as healthy women. We have high blood pressure. We have early onset diabetes. We've got stress. There's a whole lot of things that impact us through our pregnancies that can, I think, impact our ability, one, to survive a pregnancy, and then secondly, to deliver a healthy baby. So we deal with that. We drug abuse, you name it. All of that happens in this community where we are. And so one of the things that I know that the city tried to do a while back, and I would give them at least a B+ on this, is to institute or to put more clinics into our neighborhoods so that people aren't reliant on hospitals for maternal health services. And so we've done a couple of stories. I know right around the corner from where Jaren and I live, there's the Conway Health Community of Hope, which has the Family Birth and Health Center. There are lots of programs that have been, and then of course you may remember, I don't know what's going to happen with since the pandemic, but the mom's van was always traveling through the community. Department of Health hosted that to make sure that people that didn't have access or had to go across the bridge to get maternal health services, they could, provide services in neighborhoods. And then lastly, there's this concept of having home care. And I think the Department of Health is working on that as well, or some of the nonprofits are trying to make sure that there are individuals who can go into the homes of families who can't travel to try to help to ensure healthy and successful pregnancy. So I think the numbers, and I'm making this as a statement, but then I would also ask Dr. Young if I'm right, but where you're seeing a reduction in the number of infant mortalities, right. I think that is a consequence of some of the services that have been provided. And now the focus is on maternal mortality, which, again, these are adults. And we've got to make sure that they take care of themselves. Even childcare can be an issue. If you have a child already and you're pregnant, quality health, quality and affordable childcare can create stress on you that actually impacts you and your next baby. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and I'm learning all this because I'm talking to people who are engaged in all of this activity, and I think that it's not an oversight, and I think the lack of hospitals is one issue, but I don't think it's the issue. And so that's
Let me just jump in for a second before Dr. Young jumps in as well. And Denise rightly mentioned the numbers of clinics. We certainly have many clinics in the city that offer prenatal services. But you also mentioned the mom's van, and that was part of the DC Healthy Start program, federally funded, supported by the DC Department of Health. And I want to lift up our sister Tawana Jones, who ran that mom's van, and she left us last year from COVID, but she did a wonderful job with that mom's van. So I just wanted to lift her up as well. You're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM to Heal DC with me, Joni Eisenberg. We're talking about maternal mortality in DC today with Dr. Michael Young, a Shiro neonatologist, with Denise ROLARK Barnes, who is publisher of the Washington Informer, and who also the next special guest we have is Jaren LOCKRIDGE, and we're going to hear from her in a moment. But Dr. Young, did you have any comments on what Denise was sharing?
Well, I agree that they have more clinics, more places for prenatal care, and more mothers that are seeking that care. But you can have a perfect prenatal care record and still have a delivery that goes out of all sorts of expectations, not on anyone's fault. It's just that delivery is a challenging process. the leading causes of death in maternal mortality out of Ward 7 and 8 are uterine rupture and hemorrhage. And you can't move a pregnant woman fast enough once she starts bleeding from Ward 8 to Ward 4. You just can't get there fast enough if that happens. And so there's certain things that occur when we talk about pregnancy that just need an emergency process. And that's what concerns me about the absence of a hospital in that area, because that's where those deaths occur.
And before we welcome Jared in, Dr. Young, you gave the statistics, but do you know how many women actually died last year?
No, I haven't seen that.
But when you say you gave the statistics, does that equate into, maybe 40 women, or we just don't know the number of women who actually died?
I have to see what the DC Health publishes. The Maternal Mortality Review Committee is housed in the office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and that's where that data would come from. And I haven't seen anything published.
Because as we're approaching Memorial Day, I mean, it's a thought. We used to honor the little babies that died, but we need to be honoring and remembering the women that are dying in DC as a result of having a baby. JAREN LOCKRIDGE, we're very excited to have you on with us. Again, the new chair of the Ward 8 Health Council, a mom of twins, and an activist with DC Greens and much more. But share with us some of your thoughts and concerns and possibly what can be done. Maybe does the Ward 8 Health Council have a role to play with this? But welcome, Jaren.
Well, thank you for having me, and I am so honored and pleased to be sharing space with two of my personal sheroes. I'm a big fan of you ladies and the work that you all have been doing. I say clearly that I didn't just get here saying this is a good idea or this is the work that needs to be done. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and I say that very often. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Ward 8 Health Council, when I'll say that I do that in my personal capacity. In my professional capacity, I am the director of the Well at Oxen Run, powered by DC Greens, where we're using food as the entry point to all things wellness, right? But my first and full-time and all-time job is being a mom. Anybody that knows me knows that, my kids are with me all of the time. Literally, the twins are, if you can see me right now, I'm at the well in this moment, and the twins' daycare is closed, so they are here at the well in the garden with me, right? And thinking about this, it hits home for so many different reasons. I've given birth here in the district to the twins, but I'm a mom of 3. My first child was born in Tennessee 2 weeks before I graduated from college. I'm a first-generation college graduate, and finding out I was pregnant my last year, and they telling me that my due date was my graduation date, it shook me to my core, and I was like, I gotta walk across the stage, right? I have to walk across the stage because I'd worked so hard and my family worked so hard. But I was in school, right? And on state sanctioned Medicaid, trying to figure out what I needed to do, how I needed to do, and have this baby, and I did it, right? I had the baby 2 weeks before graduation. We graduated and we relocated to the great Ward 8 with a 4-week-old baby on my hip, right? And I got to DC and got a good government job because I thought that's what I needed to do, right? I got my good government job. I did the things. I got married. Then I got pregnant with twins, right? And let me say, I'm from the South. My great-grandmother was a midwife. My mother was born in a clinic. So we've been birthing babies for a long time, right? We know about birthing babies. And also with that, it's also known that that's the closest a woman ever comes to dying, right? Like if there's any moment that you know that you're likely to die, it's when you're having a baby. And so for me, going into the labor process, there's the thought of all right, if the decision has to be made, if it's me or the baby, who's going to survive? And as the mom, I always knew save my baby, right? But then also my family and my partner also had to make the decision. If they had to say it, who would you save, right? Would you save the mom or would you save the baby? And that's a real decision that we have to make on a regular basis. And that's a challenge, right? That in and of itself is a challenge, me or my baby. But luckily with my firstborn, everything went really smoothly. When I found out I was pregnant with the twins, it brings so much back so quickly, right? I live on the south side of the district. I live on the southernmost part of DC. And I thought I could have my baby close to home. Like, who doesn't want to have their baby close to home? But when they closed UMC, they said I couldn't have my baby there. And I was like, okay, well, we'll figure something else out. But then when it came to my maternal care, I literally am 3 blocks from Community of Hope. And Community of Hope said, because you're a high risk pregnancy, we can't see you either. Right. And it was so different from what I experienced with my first child. It was so different. Having to travel to Sibley every 2 weeks from Southeast was a challenge because I was a high risk pregnancy. Right. So that in and of itself. So you physically have to get there, deal with traffic. And then I mentally have to go through all of the barriers to, get across the bridge and park in their parking lot and look at everybody who doesn't look like me and all of those challenges. Right. But then I delivered healthy girls, beautifully healthy girls on the 3rd of July. They were so healthy that on the 4th of July, I was able to walk out of the hospital and say, can I get a burnt hot dog? I really wanted a burnt hot dog. But because I surprised my mom coming home the next day, my mama had a heart attack on my bedroom floor. Literally, the 4th of July, my mom had a heart attack on my bedroom floor. 4th of July in the district, you can't get across the bridge real easily. And they said, well, we got to take your mama to UMC. That was literally the only place that she could go. So on the 4th, had my babies on the 3rd. We were in UMC on the 4th. That was a challenge. Dr. Young, when you talk about women hemorrhaging, I was one of those women that hemorrhaged. I did not hemorrhage though, because I had a really good birth. Birth was really great. But I also said, this is too much. I can't do this. I'm not having no more babies. I'm done. So I elected to go do what I had to do. And it was supposed to be a simple in and out, 1-day procedure, in and out. I went in by myself. My partner didn't go with me. They did the procedure. And I remember sitting up and saying, something's not right. Like, I don't fit. This not right. Like, I know I just had these babies, but something's not right. I stood up and I had never seen as much blood pour out of me. It started pouring out of me. They rushed me. They look at me. They stuffed me with gauze. I don't even know what's going on. Right. Something inside of me, I started hemorrhaging. I don't know what was going on. I told them I didn't feel right. They're like, no, you're fine. You'll be gone in a little bit. Like, no, just sit back. I stand up and the blood rushes out. I remember thinking, this is not okay. This is not okay. And then for me to give birth to 2 little Black girls who are also, if they choose to be mothers, the reality of what they would go through, what? And that's just to bring them earthside. Let's then talk about the postpartum and how that hit, right? The lack of food, the lack of mental support, all of the things. And then to go right back to work, 6 to 8 weeks later, knowing that I'm not okay? How often do we as Black women say, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. How you doing? Oh, I'm okay. And if you know me, I actually say I am amazingly well, right? I'm not just okay. I'm amazingly well. That is my standard answer. But I'm not. And I know if I'm not, then there's so many other women who are not, right? If me as the chair of the Ward A Health Council, I'm not okay. I'm concerned for my daughters to go through what I went through. And if I'm not okay with all of the privilege that I have, how many other women are not okay? And so I made it my mission to be who I needed, right? Like, I'm clear, I'm not having no more babies. But if I can make it easier for another sister to have babies, if I can help her eat just a little bit better, if I can let her know that her children are going to be safe so that she can take care of herself, because you can't give what you don't have. And I'm on this mission to try to be all right so that I can then be better for those who come behind me, especially these 2 little black girls that I'm trying to raise. So, you know, I'll stop there because that's my background and that's my story. And I got a lot of questions for how I can do whatever it is I can to make it better.
Thank you, Jaren Lockridge, for sharing that. And I'm going to ask Dr. Young, and as well as Denise, that was a powerful testimony, and I'm going to go back to the Ward 8 Health Council, which I was a member of since day one. And we in this country, we do not have a strong healthcare system for anybody. We rank at the bottom of all the other so-called industrialized countries. That's why we need strong advocacy to get the healthcare we deserve. And I'm just wondering, and perhaps Dr. Young and Denise can share, what could an organization such as the Ward 8 Health Council do at this moment in time? That's why Marion Barry created this council together with the health department way back when. So Michael Young, share your thoughts about what could we be doing as advocates to try to shed more light and turn this situation, or begin to turn the situation around.
I would really want to know what determined how they decided what services would be there, because it's not real clear when you look at the communities and the challenges, health challenges of the community. To plan to put a hospital that does not have those level of services, what makes them feel that's okay? That's the number one thing I would want to know, because you have a lot of health clinics and some physician offices that are there. That does help. Be sure that primary care is given in quality. But you also have a high-risk population because of just who we are, what we eat, what we do, and the stresses that we see. So you're going to have hypertension. You're going to have, for pregnant women, you're going to have obesity. You're going to have a number of things that put us at a greater risk in pregnancy to start with. So to plan to only have a level 2 neonatal intensive care unit means that you are planning to give services to what we call a level 2 population. That means a low risk obstetric population. And that's not what you're seeing. That's not what we know that we have to service there. So I'm curious about that. I would like to see what are they looking at that makes them think that those services for a hospital would be sufficient. That's my number one question.
And of course, that hospital is affiliated with GW, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the hospital, United Medical Center, is basically supported by the District of Columbia. So we have.
They're planning to close that hospital once GW's hospital is open.
That's right. So this is the city. This is something that the city's decision is dictating, that they close the hospital that was serving, made it possible for a woman to give birth in her community, and they're opening up a new hospital, privately run, that does not allow women to give birth in their community.
Oh, they'll give birth there, Joni, but I'm talking about the level of service that's going to be there. United Medical was a level 2 as well in terms of its nursery, but it had a high-risk obstetric. But they were not meant to be sitting there by themselves. At the time, United Medical was there, yes, but DC General Hospital was also there. And that, so that you can move your very high-risk obstetrics over to DC General. Now you're going to close United Medical, and you're going to have a hospital that delivers in your area, but does not address high-risk services. That's my question. What are they Are they going to ship all these moms to other places? Or are they going to ship the babies, which is what people tend to do? They'll take the babies into their units, but they'll still leave the mothers there. And if that's not the service that we need, then we need to understand why they're choosing that.
And do the hospitals across the river, are they level 3?
Yeah, Hospital Center is a level 3 for their nursery, and they do high risk OB there. Howard does a high risk OB. We're a level 3 nursery there. GW is a level 2-3. Sibley is a level 2. Who am I missing?
Yeah.
Providence is gone now. So.
Yes. Okay, we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask each of you to give your closing statements, and then we have a very important brief announcement from Ambrose Lane about the issue of baby formulas, which we discussed last week. I'm going to say that perhaps we might be on. We might be able to have some time on Memorial Day if we want to do this to continue from where we left off, because obviously this is a very critical issue, and we need to be honoring and giving thanks to the women that we're losing, the moms that are dying here in the District of Columbia after having a baby. So, Denise, what are your final thoughts for today, and where you think we should be going on this issue? In just a minute that you have.
Yeah, briefly, Joni, I would say, first of all, I think Michael Young has hit the nail on the head, and that is really going back and asking about the level of services for moms who are going to need it at the new hospital. I forgot the name of it, Jaren, but at the new hospital. Because we can't we need to know what we're going to get and what their options are. So I think that answers this whole issue about maternal mortality. I think when it comes to what Jaren and the folks there are doing at the Ward 8 Health Council and what the Washington Informer can be doing is really, one, it's an education and information sharing. You know, we've got to get out more. We've got to tell the stories more. We may talk about maternal health, but we've never put a face on it, right? And so maybe putting a face on it and telling people stories, the ones like Jaren was talking about, when a family had to make that decision, and what led up to that. If we can find folks who will talk about that, I think that is informative and educational and a form of advocacy as well. And then supporting what the Ward 8 Health Council is doing. But I think public relations, PR, education, getting the word out, all of that is critical. But it still doesn't matter if we don't have the hospital that'll provide the services. And I think we can't let that go.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time. Jared, if you have a few seconds to close out your thoughts for today.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for sharing space and information with me and educating me. Those stats were amazing, Dr. Young. I'm definitely going to repeat those a lot. But my biggest thing is just trying to be who we needed, right? Like, I'm clear that there were some things that, had they been in place, would have definitely helped me during my 4th trimester in that postpartum phase. So just trying to make sure those spaces are available for those who are coming behind me so that they don't have to deal with the same challenges that I had to deal with.
Okay, Jaren, we're very thankful again to have you as our first-time guest today, and you won't be the last. Let's go real quick to Michael Young to close out for today. Your final comment, Dr. Michael Young.
Mothers and babies deserve excellent care. It is a blessing to be able to bear a child, to carry a child, to bear a child, and then to help that baby grow. And we are in the capital of the richest nation on the land. and we need to get the services that we deserve for all of our community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Michael Young, Denise ROLARK Barnes, JAREN LOCKRIDGE, and this is me, Joni Eisenberg. This is why we started this show 30 years ago, and we're going to do what we can to support the 3 women who are on today and the community to make sure that the services east of the river for women who have a baby are improved. And with that said, Ambrose Lane Jr. is going to join us to briefly announce a very important event, a Zoom event taking place tonight around the issue of baby formulas, which we discussed last week. Welcome, Ambrose.
Thank you, Joni, and hello to all the guests whom I know, and just to remind that it's important that men are in this fight as well. I know that I was in the thick of it, fighting for the services at the new hospital, and that's why they put a helipad there, but that doesn't cover many of the things that Dr. Young has stated. But I wanted to just share with you an event that is happening tonight, starting at 7 p.m. on Zoom. The Health Alliance Network, in partnership with the Anacostia Coordinating Council, is holding a special meeting about the severe shortage for baby formula. It is a nationwide shortage, but it is affecting women here and children here in the District of Columbia, particularly in wards 7 and 8, who I have as guests. I have Councilmember Brianne Nadeau, who's the chair of the Committee on Human Services. I have Dr. Nia Bodrick. She's a former Unity Healthcare pediatrician serving wards 7 and 8 mothers. I have Dr. Akila Praler, who's a naturopathic doctor and mother of 2 children under 2 years old. I also have Sarah Beckwith and Odie Botang from the Department of Health, and not only their let me find this. They're with their WIC program. They're with the WIC program. I'm sorry. And then Dr. Stahira Long and Dr. Jessica Nash, who is with the DC Breastfeeding Coalition. The Zoom meeting ID is 841-2671-9974. The meeting ID, you don't need a passcode, 841-2671-9974. And if you want to call in, you can call in by calling 301-715-8592. That's 7 o'clock tonight on Zoom. If you want to call in, it's 301-715-8592.
Thank you very much, Ambrose. And I guess there's not a number or a website they could go to if they didn't write this down. But again, the phone number for the 7 to 9 Zoom meeting tonight on the baby formula crisis is 301-715-8592. 301-715-8592. That is going to be a 2-hour forum. Very informative. I want to thank our guest today, Dr. Michael Young, who is one of my all-time sheroes, neonatologist, Denise ROLARK Barnes, who needs no introduction, with the Washington Informer, and JAREN LOCKRIDGE, the new chair of the Ward 8 Health Council. And I want to say we might be able to come back next week of Memorial Day for a second hour. I'm not sure, but we need to find a way to lift up these women. We used to do it with the little babies who died. There used to be mention of the moms and the dads and the babies that pass. We need to somehow honor the women that are losing their lives as partially a result of lack of services in this city, Washington, D.C., the capital of the richest nation in the world. We're going to go out real quick with a song by Ambrose can help me with the Pittsburgh hip-hop person, Jazzer. I'm sorry. His song is about murder. We got to stop the murder. And we're not just talking about individual murder, but we have to change a society that allows people to die because of structural inadequacies in our system. So let's hear going out with this Jazarex from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I was just at this weekend. No more murder in our name.
With the prosecutor and the captain, they say the process democratic, but we getting bullets even though we got the ballot. Where's Malcolm, where's Chewy? Where's Pac, where's Big, where's Tukey? Where's Jay, where's Nas, where's Snoopy? Yelling the police like Boosie. Blame Nixon, he's guilty with the whole damn system. These filthy cops are his henchmen. Left Mike in the street for an hour, definition of a lynching. And cause I ain't from down here, they gonna tell me I need to mind my business. I saw him dead with a bullet in his head. You don't tell the fans, I'm a witness. This war on us, 44's on us, and he's still telling us be peaceful. Every week another black youth murder, and he still got the nerve tell us we equal. And when we stand up and put our hands up as a sign of protest, we evil. It's blood on the streets and blood on your hands. This time you answer the people. Don't let them get away with murder. 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 We gon' try them in these streets, no longer living on our knees. We better dying on our feet, ready to fight for our life, asking the Almighty, please. Don't let them get away with murder. How many juries does it take to indict a killer cop just to get that trial? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, throw another victim on that pile. 7, 8, 9 incidents, but don't ever get a pink slip in that file. 10 eyewitnesses, but they never give it, cause our pigment is brown. Where the prosecutor, he biased when the wash his hands like Pontius Pilate. Then blame us when the people get violent. You're the weatherman that created this climate. Wanna be a highness, better yet a tyrant, cause you wanna try us, our people are defiant. Bringing out the dogs, wanna turn on the hydrant. Generation David ain't afraid of Goliath. We got the power, we got the heart, ain't none of us cowards. All this pain brought the change about us. Born for the moment, we made for the hour, made for the hour. What you gonna do when your cover gets blown? When the whole world see us all suffering at home? The complete opposite of that Star-Spangled Song. Hands in the air for those that are gone. Don't let them get away with murder. 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 We gon' try them in these streets, no longer living on our knees. We better dying on our feet, ready to fight for our life, asking the Almighty, please. Don't let them get away with murder. Get away with murder.
Peace, everyone. I'm Brother Jamil, and in the Yardbird Sweets tradition established by our dear brother Askia Muhammad, we continue every Tuesday morning from 5 to 8, playing some things you've never heard before and also playing some old favorites. But we invite you to join us each and every Tuesday as we have an audio family reunion right here on WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington. Peace.
For over 30 years, African Rhythms and Extensions has connected Africa's vast polyrhythms from the past to the contemporary times with the community.